All right, welcome back. We had Katie stepped out. She's going to work on some other stuff, but I'm still joined with Arthur Gorman, and we're going to break down the city of Redding for you a little bit. So yesterday, we had a presentation on tourism, right? We need tourism. I've been saying forever in our county, there's no reason why Apple Hill should be something that we drive an hour, 2.5 hours away to, a destination place when we have all of that here, right? We have the sundial, we have the lakes, we have Whiskey Town, Shasta, we have mountain climbing, we have everything that you could ever want or need in our community, right? So they did a presentation on tourism, so that's great. Anything we could do to drive tourism, and that's a TOT tax that builds our community, right? People come, they stay in hotels, they buy things. It's great. That is a revenue source that doesn't come out of your pocket and my pocket, right? So we're all about that, right? Let's have people visit. Let's have them come buy all of our stuff. Let's have them see what's great about it, and then let's have them leave, right?
Yeah.
So
support local economy. I mean, that's what we're about to do that on Black Friday. But we want local Thursday.
Right.
And so we really want our community to go out to our local vendors, to our local small business guys.
Small Business Saturday.
Yeah, Small Business Saturday. That's what it is. Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't do a lot
Thursday's
of shopping.
Thanksgiving.
Thursday, Thanksgiving. Okay. So eat the turkey. Don't shop on
No,
Black
put up
Friday.
your Christmas decorations on Friday.
Yeah.
And then Saturday, go to your small businesses.
Buy local. Support your local people. So.
Yeah, I agree. 100%. And there's a really good video about Small Business Saturday circling around. And we have so many great places. Like, if your kids need something for Christmas, there's nowhere else that you should be going than the toy store in the mall. They have everything, you know? Yeah. And my dad is a board game junkie. So, like, for him, every year, the easiest gift to get him is some obscure board game that nobody's ever heard of. That store has everything. I've never bought him the same board game twice, and I've been buying him board games for like 20 years.
Oh, yeah. And it's those local guys in there that really need your help. We can buy a bunch of junk online, Amazon, all that stuff. And I was just listening to Pastor Jack Hibbs, and he had his podcast today. And he was talking to the pastor from Moody over in Chicago. And we have a really bad first nation issue, right? First world issue, where we buy a bunch of junk that we don't need. But they were talking about in communist China and communist Russia and Cuba and Venezuela, all the missionaries there, they tell them, they're like, what do you do for Christmas? And they're like, we buy food because that's the only thing we can buy. We sit together and we sing songs. Like we really have a first world issue because we've lost the importance of what it really means to have a local community where we support each other and come together and sing and worship and that kind of stuff. So, yeah. So, I know we've got off a little bit off topic, but like this holiday season, really focus on what matters. It's your faith, it's your family, and your freedom. And really focus on the people that are next to you because that's what's most important.
Absolutely. And then somebody posted online the other day, and I thought it was a really great idea. If you have children and you're going to be getting them things for Christmas anyway, have them go through their stuff. Or you go through their stuff. But if they go through it, they're also learning valuable lessons, right? And donate your stuff now. That way, the single parent or, you know, the grandparents that are struggling and on a fixed income or whatever can go to those thrift stores, those consignment stores, those secondhand places, and they can get affordable gifts ahead of time for Christmas. And then you're blessing somebody else's family, but also teaching your kids a lesson about, like, I have enough and I need to donate, you know, back. So I thought that was really cool. It was a good idea, right? I try to have my kids clean out their space beforehand, but I never thought about do it ahead of time so that parents have time to shop or grandparents. You know, my grandparents were always on a fixed income and they're like, I'm so sorry that this is such a small, you know, but it's not how much they spent on it that matters. It's the fact that they thought about you, and, you know. So I just thought that was really cool. So then after that, you know, we have normal public comment. And then they talked about what they want to do with the riverfront property and kind of what that 10-year goal is, 20-year goal, maybe even, and what parts they want to leave for open space and for just keeping nature, really including, some of our historical ancestry and the local native communities, and just really keeping those environments like, what is the word? Preservation, right? Like, and if you look at the map from above down, it really is a beautiful area where that river curves and there's, aqua golfs out there. You know what I'm talking about? It really is a really cool area. And there's so many outdoor adventures you can do. There's hiking and there's biking and there's rafting and there's kayaking and like, there's so much cool stuff. And they were talking about, we have a world-class river. Why don't we have world-class trails and world-class sporting things and world-class, like so
Bend, Oregon.
Right. So we could do something like that. And so like the big plan is cool. However, and I was a little bit annoyed, we're in a huge budget crisis and we're talking about these cool pet projects and big dreams and okay, cool. Like, let's all be excited about that. But,
we're going to go down and put all our money on a credit card and hopefully pay it off later on high interest. Is that what we're doing?
Yeah. And no, that's basically what we're doing. And I'm going to have you guys listen to that. But so then they also talked about one of the things that was pulled from consent was, and a lot of the people talked about again, was that lease agreement with the county for the alternative custody program. But the only thing that was being discussed is they were changing the zoning. It used to be a grazing area. It was zoned to allow grazing. But when they did the transfer of the property, somehow it changed the zoning. So they had to rezone it so that it allowed for grazing, so that it did not, 90 acres can become a fire hazard or, know, and all of this stuff's going to take time to build and process. And so all that item was just the rezoning to allow for grazing. Oh, okay. So seems simple enough. But again, we have people, and I love that they want to speak out. And I know that we have elected officials that heard them and want to connect with them and want to get on the same page as them. And they really, truly care, right? Yeah. So I want those people to know that they're being heard and that this is not at all, please don't think I'm being dismissive. But again, this is why, like Katie said, we feel like Chicken Little. The sky is falling, and nobody's listening. I say you've got to watch what's going on at local government. Because for too long, we've been focused on the county, and I take full responsibility for being asleep on it too, have not been paying attention to what's going on at the city. Right. And the city is in a huge disaster. So I've been watching it for the last 8 months. And they've been discussing this project and all the different alternatives, and all of those were presented. I sat there and took notes on what each option was. So they had their time and their opportunity. Unfortunately, our community is not educated to be involved, and our media does not do a good job holding people accountable and communicating, which is why we try to do these videos. Right. Yeah. Let's educate our community. Let's get them involved. If they don't want to sit through 6 hours of people being dramatic and, pretending to have seizures and screaming profanities and if you don't want to sit through that, then you can come here and you can watch and get a recap, or you can watch online and fast forward,
Yeah. Yeah, it's, I think we've learned that the last 5 years. We've had our 3 minutes taken away because we didn't know how the system worked. So it's the importance is to educate the community on how the process works, what's on a consent agenda and what can be polled, what happens to your item that you're passionate about when they poll it. You still get to file your grievance with the county or the city and get that put back on. The really important thing is, like, something got passed a while ago that I didn't even understand how the process worked, but how they increase your utility bill in the city of Reading. So we all pay money on our city of Reading bill, right? Our electricity. How do they increase your bill? Well, they send a mailer out to everybody that receives an electric bill, and they ask you, would you like to pay more for your electricity? And what happens? You take that piece of paper and you didn't actually open it. You throw it in the garbage because you pay online, and you don't look at your bill except online. So you didn't fill out that you didn't want to pay more. So if 50% or less return it, then they know that you're not interested in it, and it's not a no vote. The people that vote yes, it passes. The people that don't vote at all, they get what they get. So everybody that voted yes increased everybody else's utility bill. So I asked if they could change that process. The city of Reading told me no. I think it should be a vote of the people put on the ballot. They think they should send you junk mail that you throw away so they can increase it because not enough people said no.
Right. But again, if you start going to the meetings, or you at least watch the agenda, you have your community that has to vote on, they're presenting that to the City of Reading Council. They're presenting that to, the REU department. Like, all of this stuff gets agendized. So you got to watch it.
Yeah.
And then you know that it's coming out. And then you can blow the whistle and say, hey, watch your mail.
Right.
And
needed.
It doesn't mean you have to watch every agenda and I have to watch every agenda and you have to. We can split up the duties, right?
100%.
And so if you have a family where you're like, hey, I'm going to watch what's going on in the City of Reading, I'm going to watch what's going on in the county, I'm going to watch what's going on in the school board, and then you share information, or a friend group, or, if we really just get our community involved, talking in these groups, these online communities, we have some really great ones that you can be involved in, and just stay on there and look for the updates, be informed, because there are people who are actively looking to remove your freedoms. And the direct solution to that is being informed.
Right. Because we elect our representatives, so we think that our representatives will vote what we would like. Too many times we have put people in office that don't vote in our best interest. One, I have to admit that I'm at fault, because I was like, oh, City of Reading, maybe I know that guy, maybe I don't. But from what I see online, they're a good person. I think that they would vote for me. Maybe they're a fire captain. Maybe they were a police officer. Maybe they're a retired veteran. And you think, well, that guy probably identifies with me, and we probably vote the same. But then when you look at their voting record, they are legitimately taking away your freedom at every level. And we saw that with the specific plan, or that river plan before, where they were going to try to take away land that they didn't even own.
Right.
We didn't even know that as a community, because we didn't know that it was a family that owned the land, and that they're technically giving Reading the ability to manage it for them, right? So they were trying to take away land that they didn't own, and tell the landowner what they had to do with their own land. It was this big mess. But that's why we need you guys to be locally informed, and that's why Mountaintop Media is here for you, because the regular media doesn't cover it. Mountaintop Media is doing recaps, and it's really important that you support Mountaintop Media with your time, talent, and treasure. So stay tuned for more stuff. But what were you talking about? The Reading specific plan was interesting, because you had 4 different groups telling the city of Reading what they should do with the land.
Yeah. So, I mean, and if you look at, and I have a picture of all the partnerships of who's involved, it's all the same key players, right? And so that should give you pause. Like, it's all the same people who want to pick and choose what's available and who gets to be part of it, right? we have a problem in Reading where I really wish we could all just come together because we have such an amazing community. But we have kind of like this group of people that never graduated high school, or they were maybe on the outs in high school and then figured out how to be part of the cool table now as adults. And they keep trying to create these like tight-knit, inclusive only groups, right?
The gatekeepers.
Yeah. And so we really have to watch for that. And we really need to just, what is best for our community, right? And so that kind of leads us into, they had the quarterly budget and that presentation, and the outcome of that is they are going to have these workshops where they go back through and they look at the 10-year budget and they redo the whole thing. Basically, everything that Tanessa has been coming forward and saying is an issue for the last however many months has came to pass. There was no bailout with Measure A. And now all of a sudden the narrative of this is a balanced budget. What are you talking about? Why are you questioning it? Why are you trying to like make people look bad and have gotcha moments with staff has turned out to be, oh wait, she was right. She wasn't trying to have a gotcha moment. She was trying to warn you, right? And so now all of a sudden she was the one screaming, the sky is falling. And everybody's like, you're insane. And now they come and they're like, by the way, we got to go redo this entire thing because it's all bad. We're 15% under budget across the board in revenues, and we're in the hole.
Right. And that's when the scare tactic comes out and they're like, oh, well, do you want your civic center? Maybe we'll turn it into a homeless shelter. And you're like, what? No.
Right.
But let's get real. What do we really need to fund in a city? We want our streets to be safe. We want our houses protected from fire. Those are the biggest things we want, and we want the power to be on. So take care of the basic necessities that we need. You're not going to be firing police officers. You're not going to be firing firefighters, right? You're going to keep us safe. And there's some things that we can do without. I mean, if we're in that big of a deficit, I'm sorry, maybe we're not mowing the lawn at the local park this week. It's just not going to happen. We just don't have money in the budget for that.
We'll do it every other week.
Yeah. So there's different things that you can do that, and maybe you can ask for help. Maybe the community could probably partner with you. They love their parks. They love these things. Maybe we can have community partners helping us out in a time of need. And I think that would be their best bet.
And again, that brings us back to, we need to make sure that it is community minded, not bureaucratic control. Government is not complicated. And the people who are trying to make government complicated so that they have a reason to have 9 different positions for this are the problem, right? Director Robinette, who's our finance director, continually was saying things like, well, there's, that area of the budget is discretionary, and we move that and we do this, and we don't have to bring it to the board. That's board policy. And, unless the council wants us to, and under that direction, we could change that. And every single time he's said that over the last 6 months, I'm in my seat going, yes, change that policy.
Yeah.
Until we are at an area where we're not struggling, and until we have a very clear view of what's going on, there should be no discretionary anything.
Right. Like maybe they don't do the state of the city where they invite all of their political allies to come and hang out with them and use taxpayer dollars to pay for a big party. Maybe we just don't do those things anymore.
Right.
We don't have the money this year. We can actually just inform you at our board meeting and you can listen. How's that sound? Yeah.
Yeah. And especially if they're not going to announce it and advertise it to where the general city can be part of it.
Right.
It's like invite only to this certain club of people. And so I agree. And, so that is what's frustrating. And so they want to have these workshops. I went up during public comment and I said, not only are we asking, but at this point we're demanding a seat at that table for transparency. So I expect that every budget workshop will either be open to the public or recorded so the public can see it, right? Every single thing needs to be looked into. Tanessa's been screaming These are the issues. We cannot move forward based on inflated numbers that don't exist. We had a moment, and this is where I'm going to put a clip of the video, and I really encourage you guys to watch it. I know it's going to be long. It's going to be around 20 minutes, but the discussion part of it, I really want you to watch, because at one point she says, in the last 10 years, we haven't seen what is in that account. Like, there is cash on hand account part. And at one point, and I think this is before the part that I'm going to put in the clip, but at one point he says, cash and reserves are used interchangeably. I don't have a clue why you think that those are different. But then he later says how he split it up so that you could see what part of the reserves have ties to them, like they're allocated already or have funding that they have to go to, and what part is like free available money. And she's like, so then it's not, like, they are different. And he's like, well, of course they're different. And it's like, you just said that they're not. But then also, like, she asks, what are those actual numbers? Do we have cash on hand? How much cash do we have on hand? And then you talked about, like, do we have a credit card that we're paying for? And she talked about there are different parts of money that are in these discretionary rolling stocks, is what they're called. Things that can be moved on his discretion, his department's discretion, so that the council sees these numbers that look good, when in reality, that money's not there. Right. And so we do not have a clear vision of what's in the accounts.
Oh, yeah. And that's why it's so super important that you guys know who your elected officials are. There's so many people that just show up to a meeting and vote. They don't put in the time. Like Tanessa, the thing that I respect about Tanessa is that she puts in the time. She reads the board agenda. There's a lot of Republican. Yeah. There's a lot of Republican representatives and Democrat representatives. They don't even read the bills. They don't even read the agenda. And they show up to vote on something they're uninformed on. Yep. Tanessa actually puts in the work. So, you know, I might disagree with her on other things, but we're not meant to agree on everything. But Tanessa puts in the work. She has done a fabulous job of putting these things together. You guys need to vote for people that represent you and put in the work. So don't vote for some guy because they have a nice name behind them. If they're not going to show up to work every day, put it in, and represent you well, then you guys need to find somebody else to vote for. But Tanessa is doing a good job.
Yeah. And next election cycle, she is up for election. But also, so is Jack Munz. And so is Aaron Resner. And while Aaron brought up a good point, and I told her, like, hey, I even wrote down this comment that you made because that was a good question. And I appreciate that. And I want to encourage that. But then she came back with some smart alecky comment of like, I've always said the budget is a big deal. And I'm deciding what I want to respond to with Leslie, but I've always said this is a big deal. And I've always said this is an issue. And no, you made a multi-part fluffy video series with Mike Littau saying how everything Tanessa was bringing to attention was ridiculous. And government's complicated, but it's supposed to be that way, and it's fine, and we're not in trouble, and everything's great. And no, you were not, in fact, saying that, because you made this fluffy, misleading video series to the public where you made it seem like she's insane.
Right. Yeah. And you don't have to do that. I mean, what they could have done, what they should have done, is to educate.
Right.
Just come out. If you think that the other person's numbers are wrong, just come out with the numbers and prove that your side wins. Because the thing is, when you actually talk about the issue and you talk about the problem and you provide the education, the rest will fall in line. And the people can see both sides of the story, both sides of the data, come up on their own conclusion without actually going after like a political opponent. This isn't politics. This is our taxpayer money right here in Redding, California, and that's why you guys need to get involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's insane. And then I want you to watch in this section that I put in there and read people's body language, see how they're responding, see what kinds of things are being said, because I'll admit I voted for Jack Munz because he was retired officer and he seemed like he had good values and on, just
the same thing.
Very little information. And then he's up there going, I'm done with this conversation. We're moving on. I don't want to ask these questions. No, she's not allowed to do her PowerPoint. And he doesn't want the information. He wants the meeting to show up, rubber stamp what needs to be done, and then leave.
Yeah, that's not a representative.
No. And so he needs to be voted out if he chooses to run again. I hope that I push hard enough and more of our community pushes hard enough that he chooses not to run. But right now, as our mayor, he's failing us.
Right, and not everybody is meant for every position. Like going forward on a lot of things, like if you don't have the time to commit to that position, you shouldn't ask to be put in it.
Right.
So there's a lot of people that have the time, and so that's how I vote when I'm on a board. I look to my board members to the left and I look to the right and I say, I'm super busy this season of life. I'm not going to go for the chair position, and that's because I don't have time. But I know that you have an amazing amount of time right now in your life, a little bit more than I do, and you are passionate about this subject, and I think that you would be the best person at the time for the job. And that's what our council people should do. That's what our supervisors, even your school board, should do. They should look at each person on their board, realize that who has the time commitment in this season of life, and that's who they should be putting forth as the person, as a mayor, as the chair of the county, or the president of a school board. Not just someone because it's their next turn, but look, just like when we vote, who is going to be the best person to do the job?
Right. Yeah. So I'm going to attach the video here, and I want you guys to really pay attention. And then I want you guys to start getting involved. Start watching, start following. Tanessa does a lot on social media to inform the public. Start watching these recaps that we do here, or start watching the meetings online, attend in person, but get involved. We really need to hold our community accountable, our local electeds accountable, and we really need 2 good candidates who want to run for city council, because we have 2 seats that need filled. Tanessa needs support. She needs somebody that's going to stand in the gap and say, that is a great question, and I agree. And, there's plenty of people who don't have the time that would be great at it that may end up having to step up because we don't have somebody to fill it, where somebody who does have the time, who really wants to look into it, would be a really good option. And so if you're interested, let us know. We will give you all the tools and resources that you need to be successful. But we need 2 very good candidates in 2026. Watch this clip. I'm really sorry because you might leave with high blood pressure or a little upset. But let us know what you think.
We do talk about that revenue in our reports, and I think it helps contextualize the V pattern of cash that we were discussing earlier.
I would love to see a Q1 report that references property tax from January. I'd love to see that. I have not found that in any of the Q1 reports that I have from you. Moving on to the actuaries. So we need to add into the 10-year plan, which you did not recommend we do, but this is an increase of $4.2 million to our general plan.
Can I clarify that a little bit? I'm suggesting we normally don't do that with our first quarter update. We would do it with our mid-year in February. But I want council to be aware that there's a new pressure that we just learned about in August, and I want to be transparent with council that there is a new expenditure that will be hitting us in fiscal year 2027 that's increasing pressure on the general fund. I think it's important, given all of the context around this report and the fiscal health, that council is aware of that in advance of the normal timeline when we would discuss that. And
I would suggest that we change that immediately, especially if we want to have a real clear understanding of what our 10-year
to me, that's part of the workshop process.
I would say that should be part of your report. So all right, so turning to the actual reports, under section 2, it doesn't have a page number, but it's that first number. I was looking through, when I saw that you had an amended budget, it's the actual revenue compared to total budget forecast, City of Reading General Fund, September 2025. You have an amended budget. So I was looking through this because there is no adopted budget for me to compare. So I went back to look to see where there's a difference. And it looks like you have added 8.5 million into fund transfers.
That's because
from.
we transferred over 8.5 million related to gas tax, and if we spend all that, we will receive transfer for that money. So it's in order to make sure that our expenditure reports make sense relative to our revenue reports, because when we carry over gas tax or streets funding, it will be funded through gas tax transfers. So it's important for council to understand that there's an $8.5 million carryover of streets money that has an associated transfer that we will receive from gas tax.
It's a carryover.
But there's an associated revenue to that carryover in the form of a transfer from the gas tax fund.
So that's coming into our revenues.
Yes, because we will. Let's assume that streets is able to expend.
But how is it a carryover
Can I
and
finish
a revenue?
my thought real quick?
Yeah.
So when we do a carryover for streets funds, their budget, let's just say, goes from about 12 million to 20 million. The reality is, if they spend all of that within the current fiscal year, we will now receive $20 million of transfers from the gas tax fund, which is a separate fund that we will now receive a transfer from. So it's a carryover in both expenses and revenues. I would think of it more of like a re-budgeting effort, because you know that you're going to receive both of those things as part of your next year expenditure.
Where did that come from?
From the unspent money from last year. I'm sure Director Webb could talk to you about some of the projects that they're working on, but they had about $8.5 million of unspent gas tax money at the end of fiscal year 2025 that will be spent in fiscal year 2026.
Did any of the other carryovers get added as revenue?
The other carryovers do not have an associated revenue to them, so I would not add a revenue in.
How do they not have an associated revenue?
Because most all of them already have a balance within the general fund that we intend to spend.
What does that mean?
That means that in the case of, again, I'll try to explain this for clarity again. In the case of streets, we know if they spend the carryover money that's sitting in their reserve in the separate fund called, there's two of them, but ostensibly we'll call them the gas tax funds, that by spending that money, we can now transfer it to the general fund.
So they've spent the 8 million.
They have not spent the 8 million.
So then why is it getting transferred? It seems like if it's already there in that fund, it seems like you're double dipping it.
We're not double dipping it. But the money is expended from the general fund, and once we expend it from the general fund, we have the authority to transfer it from the gas tax fund as appropriate.
But you haven't expended it yet.
We haven't expended it, but in our budget, we carried over an expenditure that will have an associated increased revenue.
When you spend it.
When we spend it.
So then why is it in here as a revenue?
Because we put an expenditure in on the budget side, and I think it's important if there is an associated revenue that we associate that revenue from a budget perspective, because otherwise it would artificially make it look like we're spending $8 million of reserves. Did we just
get $8 million, or we've had it?
We have it. It's sitting in the gas tax fund, though. It's not in the general fund. Right, it's in the
gas tax fund, but you're adding it now to the revenue, but you haven't spent it.
That seemed very...
Well, but he just said we add it when you spend it. So it's been sitting in that fund, and now
I feel like you're asking the same exact question.
Well, I don't really understand. It seems like double dipping. So
it's absolutely not double dipping. There's going to be an increased expenditure in the general fund that will have an increased revenue.
And if you say you do it when you expend it, you haven't expended it. I'm not sure why we're
because we're budgeting a new expenditure.
Huh?
We're adding to the budget for $8.5 million that will have an associated revenue. So we're showing the associated revenue.
Okay, but none of the other carryovers have that.
Because the other carryovers do not have an associated revenue.
How do we pay for it then?
What's that?
How are we paying for it?
Like
some of the carryovers, i.e. there's about
say.
$2 million of ARPA carryovers. So we have that cash sitting in our reserves that will then be expended.
Mr. Webb, do you want to talk?
Wait, is the ARPA funds been moved over? Because those would have been in grants.
The ARPA funds, since we were still in the AS400 when we began the ARPA process, it's always lived within the general fund, and we've always used our general fund reserves.
So the money the ARPA funding for our police officers is in the general fund right now?
Yes, it has been since the day council approved it.
So it's not, okay. And then why exactly, if we have a grant account, are there federal grants and other grant operating in this revenue report?
Because in this transition, things that were already living within the general fund, I didn't want to move them over because it makes it confusing for departments to change the way they're accounting for those activities. So we're phasing them over as we get new grants since the implementation of the new system. So use the SAFER grant as an example. That one started, and ARPA is a good example. Both of those started during when we were in the AS 400, when we only had the general fund, as I was describing earlier. Had those started today, they would be in the grants fund. But since they started in the general fund, I didn't want to move them because it could make it confusing for accounting.
So this federal grant operating of $2 million, is that the SAFER grant?
That's the SAFER grant.
That's the SAFER grant. So it's there because it's reimbursing us.
We expected to reimburse us about $2 million.
But this is the 25-26 budget. So why
Yeah,
is
we still
it,
have SAFER grant positions that are being funded in
these
FY
are new ones.
26.
This is
They're
not
the
the
same
reimbursement.
positions. They're
But
just
this is not the
on-
reimbursement amount? This is a different amount?
That's
This is a new
the
one?
amount expected for the current year's expenditures. The other amount through the end of last fiscal year is about $2.1 million.
That's different.
That's different,
That's
but
a
we
different
expect to receive it. It's
Okay.
the same grant, it's just a different time period of expenditure.
But this line item is not for that.
It's the same grant. It's just
But
that's
it's not for the reimbursement.
No, that's for the current year.
And it won't go in the grant
It'll
account.
all come into the general fund.
Okay. Always?
Just for the
So
SAFER grant.
certain grants are going to come into the general
No,
fund.
as we move into the future, all grants will be in the separate fund. But
You're
the
gonna
ones
phase
that
all these out.
predate, the ones that predate the new system, which was 7/1/2023, will continue to be accounted for within the general fund until they run out. And then any new grant from July 1st, 2023 will be placed in the new fund.
Okay. I would make a motion. I just want to say, I find it insane for you to say that we started the year with our reserves not at 10%, because I argued that all throughout the budget workshops, that what we were doing made no sense, that we overinflated our revenues between $4 and $6 million, that the expenditures, we cut grant-funded positions, and we added back 6 positions. So of course we were going to have, our expenditures were going to be higher than what they were saying. And I find it insane that you're like, now all of a sudden we have a problem. This budget has been inaccurate from the start. So I'm really glad that everybody has caught up that this budget is inaccurate and we are not in any way, shape, or form balanced because the revenues were inflated. So I would make the motion that we do not accept this report, that you come back to us with recommendations to modify those 8 categories of revenues, that they are either flat from last year or that you can justify why they wouldn't be flat from last year, so that we have a correct and accurate assessment of how much money we really think is coming in. If you have that one-time money, that can obviously be added to what this budget is, but we need a really clear understanding of where our money is. As far as setting priorities, you first have to know how much money you actually have to pay the bills that we currently have before we can say, well, we only have this much money, so this is how much cutting we're going to actually need to do. So I would say, I will make the motion to reject this. You should come back with revenue adjustments. I would say that the personnel level reduction scenarios could be a part of that, whether it's 2018 or 2020. As long as it's before 2020, I think that that's reasonable. I'd also like a worksheet of this separate grant account so that I can actually see what grants are in it, what grants are not in it, where those grants are supposed to go into which departments, so that we do have a clear understanding of what's being funded with some of these positions. The fact that this didn't actually tell us to change the 10-year plan, because the 10-year plan is not, all those transfers in is not changed in the 10-year plan. So it's changed in this workshop, but the 10-year plan transfers were not altered on the 10-year.
To clarify, we wouldn't alter the 10-year plan for those transfers ever in the history, because it's a like one-for-one expenditure. So we don't, I've said this a couple times, but we don't amend the general fund for every carryover. We amend the general fund 10-year plan for actions done by council. So if there was a budget resolution tonight that was increasing expenditures, we would amend the 10-year plan for that, but we wouldn't necessarily amend the 10-year plan for every carryover item or every change to the budget. I'll give you another example of some of the things that are actually included in that number are transfers from rolling stock. That's a a council policy that gives us that authorization. We see an increased budgeted revenue for transfer. It obviously wouldn't be $8 million, but there would be a number in there that would increase transfers for rolling stock that we wouldn't amend the 10-year plan for. So there's a number of items. We don't amend the 10-year plan for every single item that changes budgetarily. We amend it for the macro items that actually have an impact on the 10-year plan, and those are typically items approved by this board.
Again, so I think that, anyway, I don't think we should accept this. I think we should reject this, as it says in alternative action, and he should come back with the alterations to the 10-year, so we actually have a clear understanding of how much money we actually intend to receive, so that we can have this priority setting and all of these other things where we start talking about cuts and cuts to staffing, cuts to all of the priority setting that they're talking about. But if we don't actually know how much money we have bringing in, and when 8 of 12, that's like, what is that, 67%, is inaccurate, and we're underperforming, I think we need to do that first.
Michael Atal?
I mean, a question, I mean, whether we accept the report or reject it, it doesn't change the numbers.
No,
So,
the numbers won't change.
They need to change.
They're accurate.
I mean, the
They're
numbers
not
are,
accurate.
the numbers are the prior numbers, the past numbers,
the
correct?
prior numbers are the past. My thought process is what Councilmember Adet is requesting would be one of the first items of a workshop process is to discuss our revenues and where council wants them to land. This is, I kind of prefaced my presentation with what our quarterly update is. It's meant to be kind of an update to council. I've never seen where we amend our 10-year plan as part of it. I'm not saying we can't. I'm not saying we shouldn't.
Have you ever seen a budget workshop go through where you guys are
Can you let
denying
Mike talk?
reality? I mean,
Vanessa,
this is,
Let
no,
Mike talk.
no,
It's his turn.
no, I can talk if I want to talk.
No, you can't.
I just did. I just did.
Mike, it's your turn.
Behave.
Good grief.
Yeah, I just got questions, so.
Go for it.
So the FEMA funds, that's about what was it, two and a half million?
2.5 million through September.
Right.
That they owe us through the end of June. Sorry,
2.1.
2025. It would have been about 2.1 million that we were owed.
Right, so that, I mean, it does help shore up things. I haven't been here for 4 years, 6 years, 8 years. Is that a thing that typically happens every year where we have such a big expense like that from disasters or something like that to where we're waiting on money to come back? Is that happening every single year?
No,
or is this
typically we would have that grant billing done on a more regular basis. There's been some changes in the process with FEMA and our federal grants in general. We used to have a lot of what they call UEI numbers. They're basically grant identification numbers. The city used to have 4 or 5 of them. We in finance always had a goal of trying to consolidate to the best of our ability. Well, it was forced upon us by the federal government. And when we applied for that grant, an old UEI number was used as they required us to consolidate. We're having to update it in their system, and it's causing delays in getting that number updated. Last time we talked to them, it's a tier 3 ticket with FEMA. What that means or they've been shut down. They were shut down for 43 days or whatever. So I'm expecting it to take a little extra time because of that. And we've been waiting for, I think Fire's been working on it for 5 or 6 months with them.
Yeah. The Rancheria deposits, that's coming, or we've had that?
We spoke with them earlier this week. We expect that we will receive it by the end of the week.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the optics of moving the money from the Rancheria or Stillwater. I mean, the reality is it just makes us look better on paper, but it doesn't really deal with the realities of we're going to have to make some adjustments and really think things. So, I mean, moving the money just makes us look better, but we have challenges ahead of us that we certainly need to look at. I've heard some common themes that I share with everyone here, but when I think about staffing, I've heard the words hiring freeze. Whether we have to take formal action, I'm sure there's some internal things talking about, not hiring right now, but one thing we've talked about in the past, I remember prior meetings, was we would keep an eye on our vacancies, and I don't think it'd be a bad idea that if we have some vacancies that maybe there's some discussion with council whether we proceed forward and hire those vacancies and talk about the need of why we really need to hire certain positions that impact our general fund as we're watching cash. But I don't think that's a bad idea to look at a hiring freeze within count that impacts general funds. But I definitely do think we need to do some budget workshops. We've heard a theme that it's a great idea for all our departments to have forward thinking, to come back with new vision, ideas, reset that budget back to maybe 2018 or 2020 levels. And we just get a little bit more skinny. We just have some real challenges ahead of us. And we've heard that even before, before I took office, that they said the budget is going to be the most difficult cycle that we'll have over the next couple of years. Are you sure you really want to do this? And we do have challenges. I don't think you can control the sales tax and the property tax that came in. You give us reports from other departments that give us some guesses on that, but it stinks that sales tax continues to slide, and I think we're going to have that pressure for a while. And over time, that someday will come back, and that will be. I look forward to those days when sales tax does rebound, but it's unknown when it ever will. And I think it's whether we talk about taking our sales tax revenues back down to 0%, it's not a bad idea for us to get even more further backwards, so we even get further ahead of this stuff as we just continue to get more reports that are going to come out. But I definitely do think that some budget workshops, hearing from each department on ideas and some certain cuts they can look at, are definitely something we need to consider. So, that's just my thoughts. So
Are you making a motion?
Is
right
that
now?
a second to my motion?
I agree with everything
You're
you
going
said.
to accept this
so.
report?
You are arguing whether or not this report is accurate, and